said, my 12-year-old still can't ride a two-wheel bike. Pedaling is hard, but he can do it, just not while steering and balancing. He doesn't enjoy it and almost immediately lets the bike tip over. I gave up. Now a friend says it will be hard, if not impossible, to teach him to drive if he does not learn this skill. Is that true? What do I need to do to help him ride a bike?
Mm-hmm. So no, driving and riding a bike have pretty much nothing to do with each other, except for steering. And steering, doesn't require, it's funny, riding a bike is a much harder task than driving a car. And so steering he can practice obviously on any kind of the cars in a, what are they called? Like the cars that you go on in carnivals and.
Oh, like, like the Autobahn at Disneyland,
right,
or even a video game maybe.
Or carts, or like carts. Okay. Thank you, Emily.
I can't hear.
The cars, that sort of thing you can always practice as well. Although a lot of carts go very fast, but I mean, anything that you can sit in and steer will help you with the steering aspect of driving. He's not quite there yet. So right now, what you are working on is riding a bike, and it's a little bit difficult because he's 12, so I assume he's kind of big and difficult to help balance him. But you definitely don't want to teach numerous skills at the same time. So I would really focus first on just the pedaling, because you're saying that he's almost good at that. So I would get a stationary bike or take him to the gym where there is a stationary bike and just practice the pedaling aspect so that he becomes very, very good at pedaling. Because establishing balance has to do with pedaling, right? If you're slow, then you're not going to have balance. If you're going faster, you will have balance. So make sure that he's able to go faster, and then you will need an adult, someone who's much larger than he is or is able to keep up with him, to be able to do just like we do with any other child, which is essentially hold the back of his bike while he's pedaling and run behind him and then gradually let go. And so just split up those particular tasks so that it's one thing or another. Steering becomes an issue, obviously, and as I said, steering he can practice separately. But so you're breaking down each of those types of skills and not really requiring him to do all three at the same time. So that's steering, pedaling, and then keeping balance.
Okay. And if a 12-year-old isn't finding it reinforcing, is it important to do?
No, it's not. I mean, thank you for bringing that up, because, I tortured my son to learn biking just because we as a family go biking. But the truth is, I mean, if you don't need to, pick your battles, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
so not necessarily essential, and it doesn't, I love the fact that it doesn't mean that they can't drive a car eventually.
Well, it has nothing to do with each other at all. And the thing is, though, that, I always encourage parents who are willing to attack these issues to go ahead and do it, because obviously you're teaching him a leisure activity. Yeah. And our kids need all the leisure activities they can get. So.
Yeah. And it seems like it's a very social thing at that age.
It's a social thing. It's an exercise related thing as well, which is all of our kids in this day and age need anything that's going to give them exercise.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of benefits. And don't think that while he's learning, of course he's 12, but I mean, that's why we also have training wheels. If you don't have an adult who can actually run behind him and hold him, training wheels are a very effective way of teaching the individual to have balance, because they maintain balance, and then you very gradually lift them, so then they're not useful anymore. It's a shaping procedure.
I never realized that before. Right. Okay, fascinating, wonderful. Okay, this is a question that we've had in many different varieties, but what BCBA programs do you recommend? And we actually had somebody wanting to know last week, is there anything in Wisconsin specifically? This one is just open. Yeah, I don't know what there is in Wisconsin. Obviously, I have to, first of all, recommend anything that is taught out of University of Nevada, Reno, UNR. The faculty there, in my mind, are some of the best people in behavior analysis.
And then as well as UNR, I really want to say that we've been delighted to work with Florida Institute of Technology, FIT, and a lot of our folks go to FIT, and they have a fantastic program.
We had Tom Zabo on the show just a couple of weeks ago.
Right, and he works
from FIT.
He works for FIT and is helping run our cohort right now. We have multiple cohorts with FIT. We have people going through their masters for their BCBA, BCABA, lots of different programs, and they're very, very capable, and a lot of their coursework is online, which is extremely helpful. There are a lot of programs. I mean, I don't know really, I know that in terms of ease of use, National even has an online program, St. Cloud. There's so many different ABA programs, my goodness. These are all after my time. I went to UCLA before ABA even existed, or we used to call it behavior modification. Let's put it that way. But when you have Jonathan on, he would be the best person to talk about this because he's pretty much aware of everything that's out there.
Okay, well, definitely.
Or Adele, they both are very aware, and they're at ABBA International. They should be back today.
Yes, we're excited. They're going to be on the show tomorrow, both of them.
Oh, wonderful! I'm very curious. Yeah. I have to remember to watch the show tomorrow.
There we go.
Curious to see how it went.
All right, we are going to take a short break and come back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us answering your questions live. So thrilled to have her here.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. I'm so sick of trying to find a program for my teenage daughter that isn't geared toward the 14 boys that are also participating. Any ideas for a teenage daughter? I was going to say 14, but it's 14 boys in the group.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what type of program you're looking for. Do they elaborate on anything? So I guess I'm guessing that it's either a social skills program or leisure or something like that. I mean, and I don't know where you are, too, so that's the other thing. I'm trying to give resources here. I mean, there's a website called Love My Provider. If you are in California, I think Love My Provider can probably help you with access to resources out there. I don't know how to guide you other than that because I don't know what type of program and I don't know where you are.
Yeah. I'm aware of there's a group that's growing called Girl Power.
Oh, nice.
That is in different places, but you'd pretty much have to go to their website, which I'm thinking is probably girlpower.com, or Google it to see. But I don't know how many places there are, but I'm always...
They're developing a lot of these. I mean, this is one that you just, in terms of activities for teenagers, there's so much developing now in theater.
Yes.
We were just talking a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, with Lane Hall about she wants to replicate and do much more musicals, and I want to work with her to try to get her into each of the card sites so that we can pick adolescents, teenagers for her to develop singing for. One of my previous recovered adults who just now is getting her bachelor's and has actually been working for us as a therapist. We were talking yesterday and she was telling me that she's really interested in developing some dance programs for our kids in our various sites. So there's a lot of stuff developing, I know, in the entertainment arts or performing arts area for our teenagers, which I think is fabulous. I love it.
And we've seen that some of the girls, I'm thinking of, I think it's Joe Mantegna's daughter, who got involved with inclusion films and got interested in the makeup for films.
Oh, I didn't know she got into makeup. Funny.
I think it's Joe Mantegna's daughter.
She was doing, the interviewing. She was being the MC sort of, and doing a lot of the interviews, and she was fabulous with it. Very, very good.
I think those are great opportunities for our girls. And if the program doesn't exist where you are, it's one of those things where when you see a need, fill it. And maybe I'm just guessing, maybe there are 12 other moms who are sitting there saying, why isn't there a program for my daughter?
Right.
Be the change that you want to see.
That's
maybe you need to start the Girl Power chapter where you are, or the theater program. What is it that your daughter is interested in? And make that club, make that organization.
Absolutely.
You could change things for a whole bunch of people, starting with your daughter.
It would be so amazing, right?
Wouldn't it?
That's absolutely.
Every time I meet somebody now and I say, how did you have that idea? That they're doing something incredible. And almost always it's, well, I needed something for my kid. And that's how I got started in this.
Yeah.
So, maybe you could be the next person to head something off. We'll look forward to hearing from you what you decide to do. Okay, moving on to the next question. We couldn't get ABA when my son was little. Then when he was 15, we tried, but it seemed like it was geared toward little kids, not the real life stuff he needed. Now he's 24, doing well, but there are things he needs to learn. Is there something ABA for these kiddos?
Yes. Excellent question, and I appreciate the question because we are getting a lot more questions from parents who have children who are older. And you are absolutely right. Most ABA programs, I think, is due to the lack of additional training, I guess I would say, or due to what students learn in college. Most ABA programs are focused on very young kids, so early intervention. And that's basically because most of the BCBAs who come out of universities now are just taught the very basic, sort of how to work with a 2-year-old, 3-year-old. If that, I mean, I have to step back. In our day, when I was going to school, we were very focused on early intervention, very, very focused. But then we gradually grew with the adults, obviously, because I was going to school before there were adults, or that many adults, right? It was a very low prevalence back then. But these days, I think we see our adults in different, I think the mentality is basically, if you're a child, if you're a very young child, I'll use ABA to get rid of challenging behaviors and to teach you skills because you have potential to recover. If you're an adult, I'm just going to use ABA to deal with challenging behaviors. Well, that's a very incorrect mentality or thought process because our adults learn just like our kids do. We've published on this, and in fact, it's we're looking at some of the data coming out of skills right now, Shannon, and we're seeing that our adults learn at the same rate as our kids do, which is pretty amazing.
Love that.
It really is fascinating stuff. Which actually shocked me, but it makes sense. It's just they have so much more to learn, right? And it is entirely possible to find programs that are focused on teaching rather than just dealing with challenging behavior. And this is all ABA programs dealing with ABA. CARD has a very fantastic, I think, adolescent adult program, which we launched last year, or we've launched multiple times. We have about 40 or 50 adults now that are in our program, but we're focused on different things. We're focused on vocational skills. We want to teach our adults jobs and get them out there. In a separate thing, we are very focused on leisure and social, trying to just teach them various things like that. But our adult program is massive. I mean, it goes from everything from, teaching the individual how to balance a checkbook, if they're capable of that, right, to very, very basic adaptive skills, like, being able to brush your teeth or shave or go to take care of your apartment, whatever it may be. I mean, it's a huge program.
So it's very specific to the individual.
Very specific, and it really does encompass every possible skill. And I think that's what this parent is referring to, and I completely agree. There aren't adult programs, there are very, very few adult programs in the country where the focus is something that is a teaching skill. In other words, it's increasing the individual's skill level. Yeah. But what I'm saying is contact us. We have these programs all over our offices, all over the country. We'd be happy to try to guide you if we can't provide services. And you should look because, yes, to answer your question, ABA, the same techniques that we use in teaching young children can be used to teach adults. It doesn't make any difference. It's just a matter of content, curriculum, and a lot of ABA providers haven't developed curriculum and content. Yeah. But, they can. It's easy. Anything you think of, like let's say I want to teach someone how to shave, and I've never been exposed to a curriculum. It's a very simple backward chaining procedure. Any behaviorist should be able to take the process of shaving, break it into steps, and teach it using backward chaining.
And then, and just because one of the things that I hear here and that I hear all the times from parents, that they think that they're going to teach it in a way that's baby. And,
right.
and I'm really struck by the fact that when I came to understand what ABA was and how many different applications of it there are, and that people use ABA techniques to train athletes, Olympic athletes. So there's nothing baby about it. It's just being able to separate it into a way that you can actually learn it.
Right, and so it's not going what you do with adults is you're not doing discrete trial necessarily, sitting down and repeating something 3 times, etc. That's not the way you do it. A lot of the techniques are then employed through natural environment training. So again, going back to the example of shaving, like you will essentially set out all the material and do everything through modeling with the individual, and then teach the individual to do the last step on their own, and then teach them to do the last 2 steps and the last 3 steps, and so on and so forth. And you have picture schedules to help the individual. So everything is done more or less through environment and modeling, and using ABA techniques which involve reinforcing the smallest steps and chaining all the steps together and so on.
So making it very possible wherever that individual is to teach them whatever skill is important to you and to them.
Right.
Wonderful. So again, you can contact CARD. They could call the 800 number to be able to do that,
or
call
just
the
800 number. And you know, it's funny because the person here who's the most passionate about this is Sarah Cho, who is also director of operations at CARD and is probably one of the most busy people I know. And yet, you know, it's always the busy people that get more done, which is amazing to me. So, you know, just talk to admissions and talk to them about the adult program or the adolescent adult program. And if you have any difficulties, please try to get in touch with Sarah Cho at CARD. And she will definitely guide you.
Okay, and we've been meaning to have her on the show for a while, but she's incredibly busy.
She's busier than I am.
Yeah, well, that's saying a lot. But at some point, we'll get Sarah Cho on the show to talk about. That's hard to say. Sarah Cho on the show. To talk about some of these different programs, because it's really quite amazing. But don't give up. If there are things that you want to learn, there are absolutely programs for you. Okay, next question on the opposite end, age-wise, a 3-year-old with autism isn't making sound. Is there hope for verbal at some point? And they said, my heart breaks.
Oh, yes, there definitely is. And I'm so sorry. It's very difficult, I'm sure, for you. Get intervention right now. You know, I assume normally when we're trying to produce sound, we will go after speech pathology, and with speech pathology, the concept of anything intensive is probably more like 2 hours or 3 hours a week. That's not enough. So, of course, please do get your 3 hours a week of speech. That's great. That will assist. But also, please get, you know, I don't know, 20 hours of ABA at least, working on just speech production and very basic sound imitation and sound production. Prompt techniques in speech are useful for the production of sound. In ABA, what we do is we usually generate sound because the first thing we use, the first concept we teach is manding or requesting, and because it has its own inherent motivation. So when you're requesting something, you're very motivated because you want it, and therefore you will do whatever you can to try to get that object producing sound. So we have some techniques in ABA that'll help, but then I think speech pathologists have good techniques as well, prompt techniques and fabulous techniques in terms of trying to get speech production. Your ABA group should also be doing a lot of oral motor activities, and because, you know, sometimes our kids are not able to produce sound. They're highly apraxic, their tongue is not moving fast enough. There's a lot of motor issues that need to be dealt with, and so please don't give up, and please do get involved with pretty heavy intervention. I've had I don't know, maybe half my kids, or maybe, I don't know, maybe a third of my kids at age 3 are nonverbal. So don't let this freak you out at all, because that's the age that we start to intervene.
It's amazing because there's a mom who has been on the show a couple of times, a very active blogger. And when her son, who's now 27, was little, she remembered that the statistic was something like 17% of kids who weren't verbal would become verbal. And then recently she looked it up again and emailed us, and it's closer to like 78% now of kids who are on the autism spectrum who aren't verbal who will become verbal. So that's a much different number from the time that her son was 3 to now being 27. Gives you a lot of hope.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, I can only speak personally, and personally, I've learned a lot over the last 20 years how to make a child produce sound. You know, and just the fact that we start with commands or requests in itself is a big positive, and that's something that we didn't used to do 25 years ago. So that is very useful. The fact prompt techniques involve touch to the face, and they're very, very helpful for the individual. The fact that we've come to the conclusion that a lot of this has to do with apraxia, and that there are oral motor exercises. We never used to do that 20 years ago. The fact that we are able to now bring sensory types of exercises and activities into the, you know, like just even things like blowing party favors or whistle, air production. We've learned so much more over the last 20 years, so that, which I think contributes to that percentage increase.
It's amazing. It gives a lot of hope. All right, we're going to take a short break and come back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to I'm all confused about everything. Autism Live and Ask Dr. Doreen. We're so thrilled that we have Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh with us today, and she's answering your questions. Great question from a parent. How do I know what the least restricted environment for my child is? They say it's special day class, but how do I know if they're right?
Okay, so the least restrictive environment for your child is the most independent environment that your child will succeed in. So I wish I had the chart in front of me, but there's a chart actually that shows sort of the most independent are obviously being regular education without any assistance, without an aid, okay? And the most restrictive being, let's say, special education, small group class. And there's all these tiers in between, which are, you know, so like at some point your child is able to go from special education to regular ed, or they're able to go partial. So they're sort of, for let's say 2 or 3 hours of the day, they're mainstreamed in regular ed. Usually that will start with something like physical education or lunch breaks or whatever it might be. They are taken to the regular ed. The rest of the time they're in special ed. Special ed, you get much more attention, obviously, so it's a much lower ratio of teacher to student. Regular education, depending on the grade that the child's in, you get much lower attention because there's so many children and one teacher and maybe one aide. So it really depends on how much your child is capable of. I find often that if you have somewhere in that hierarchy or in those tiers, once you enter regular education, you always enter with an aid. Now you have to, so basically, let's say you have special ed, then you have special ed, you know, with some reverse mainstreaming or something, and then you have regular ed at some point. And once you enter regular ed, it should be with an aid. And that is very expensive for the school district, so you need to watch out for that, because that's a step they're going to want to skip. They're going to want to keep your child in special ed for as long as they can because it's cheaper. And then if you're, you know, so there's a bigger, I guess, dichotomy for special ed, whereas in our minds with our own kids, it's not, there isn't no dichotomy, it's a gradual fade. So the school might say, stay in special ed, stay in special ed, stay in special ed. They get more money and it's cheaper for them. And then, but if your child is much higher functioning, they'll say, okay, you can go to regular ed and you're on your own. Right. Whereas really in the middle, there's some ground that is probably where your child fits in, which is your child capable of some hours of the day at least being in regular ed with a one-to-one aid? Fight for that. That's very important. It is your right to have that. And that one-to-one aid is what makes it possible for your child to mainstream, to go to the regular ed. And that one-to-one aid has to be well trained. So it's not enough just to get an aid from the school. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone to schools to observe a child, and I've seen the aide and the school aide somewhere outside having a cigarette or something, like not even there. Please make sure that you have a really good aide. School districts will have to provide an aide if you get that in your IEP, and then if you have a good lawyer or if you insist on this, you can get them to allow an ABA agency to provide the aid, which is always going to be a different level because that aid will have had better training. And in some cases, they will also allow the ABA agencies to train the school district aide and make things better. But, so you're always shooting for that highest level of independence. But really, I would say the best way for you to find out is just go and observe your child or have a friend observe, because your child might act quite differently if you're there.
Yeah.
And see, is your child able to do that level, and keep pushing your child up that hierarchy.
Yeah. It's so hard to know as a parent.
It is, huh?
Because they tell you, and a lot of times, you want to trust them. They're the experts, right? But we all are aware of the fact that a lot of their decisions are being driven by money.
Right.
Which makes it hard to trust them.
It's so true. These are the things that never really occurred to me when I think about my own kids, for instance. I would love to, even with my kids, it's nice to have an agency. I mean, I think this is sort of part of what we did for parents and have continued to do for many years, is we're so on your side. We're so with the parents in terms of, I'm going to get the best thing there is out there for your kid, and which is probably why school districts really don't like us all that much, because we don't care about the cost.
Yeah.
They shouldn't care about the cost either, but obviously
legally they're not supposed to.
Right. But obviously they have constraints, and they can't not care about the costs.
Yeah. I do think that having somebody else who is not tied to the funding, there were many instances where we would have somebody at CARD that I knew and knew me, and in some cases did not know my child, but knew what our goals were, because sometimes it needed to be someone who didn't know our son. Mm-hmm. I think about a couple of years ago when we weren't sure about what was happening, and Hank, you guys sent Hank in, and Hank had never met my child before, but he knew me and knew what I wanted to make sure, what goals we achieved, and so he went in and observed and came back, and it was a wealth of information for me that he said, here's what's happening, here's what needs to happen, but here's where you don't need to worry, because he's doing this and doing that, and it was like having a trusted pair of eyes there to see, and he got a really good glimpse at it, because if I had gone in, all the kids know me and my son knows me, and everything goes out the window. I don't really get a good read for what's happening.
I often do that. I often will send a senior supervisor in just to do an observation, because I don't want the child reacting to either me being there, the parent, or someone they know being there. And so, when Hank goes in, obviously Jem doesn't know who he is or why he's there, and it's very good.
And for those of you who don't know, Hank has been on the show a couple of times. Hank is one of the sweetest souls on the face of the earth. And to me, he's a rock star, because if you've read the book, A Real Boy, Christina Adams, who's been on the show, she talks about her experience of coming to CARD many years ago. And Hank was her case supervisor. And I read that thing like it was the Bible, and, just would refer back to it. And all the different times that we were doing therapy and we would come into the CARD building, I would be looking for, where's Hank? And did she change the name? Is there really a Hank? I would ask questions, never saw him. And it was only about 2 years ago that I walked into the conference room and somebody said, have you met Hank? And I acted like teenager at a Justin Bieber concert.
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
I blubbered and went, are you the real Hank? And of course, he thought I'd lost my mind. But he was very sweet about it.
This is something that I love about our senior people, like Hank. I'm just so blessed to have these people in my life. But, for me to have had the opportunity to have someone like Hank, for instance, around for past 20 years, and now, he's board certified, obviously, and now even though he has so many years of actual ABA under his belt, he is running our entire ERP system, you know? So it's like, that's what I love about our seniors, is that they do so many different things.
Yeah.
They help run this company. They don't just, you know, it's amazing.
And they understand
yeah,
on so many levels. He's amazing. And by the way, he's the person, whenever we're talking about compliance, and I say the thing that really got to me, Hank walks through the hallways, and if somebody is saying something about a child who's not being compliant, Hank's first question is, how much are they praising him? Then when I quote to you guys, that's Hank that says that. How much are they praising him? Up it. Up the praise. The compliance.
Have you met his kids? His own kids?
Yes. And they're adorable.
They're beautiful.
They're absolutely adorable.
Yeah, I love his kids.
He's an amazing person. All right, I've digressed. Let's get back to a question. Okay, how do we do 40 hours when school starts? Kindergarten, apparently that's what they're starting is kindergarten, and they said they will turn 5 in July. Kindergarten starts August. We started ABA 3 months ago. So the concern is how to keep the 40-hour program going once kindergarten starts.
Okay, so we say the child is how old?
The child will turn 5 in July.
Okay.
And they're slated to go to kindergarten apparently in July.
Okay, so I'm assuming...
Or excuse me, in August.
Right. So I am assuming that the child is high functioning, and that you will have an aide with the child in school, and the hours that the aide is with the child count towards the 40 hours.
Okay.
So
that's a fairly big assumption, though.
That is
right?
a big assumption, because I'm not sure I would mainstream otherwise. Like, in other words, I would not be shooting for kindergarten unless that's the case. So I have a very sort of strict idea of how to progress through intervention, and it's important to me because it helps me prioritize. So when I say I start with, let's say I start with a child at 4 or 3, whatever it is, I'm doing the 40 hours, and when I start to infuse them into school, it has to be on my terms, not based on just their age. So it has to be that I'm ready to actually put the child in school, and that the child's going to benefit from being in school. And then I will also, kindergarten is when things start to get serious and I can't mess around, and I pretty much have to give my child up for about 30 hours.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I will definitely make sure that I have an aide with the child, but I won't, if not for the whole time. Let me just say that. If I have the child in school and I have an aide with them, even for the whole time, for the 30 hours, I would still do another 20 hours of intervention at home.
Okay.
So, and how you get that in is you do it after school. We have sessions every day from 4 to 6. Our sessions go all the way till 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then you cover the weekends.
Yeah.
You intervene during the weekends, and you have to get your ABA people to do that. I mean, all of our staff work on it, or we have full activity on the weekends.
And sometimes kindergarten is only half day. Sometimes it's full day.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on where you are in the country.
Oh, good. Okay.
Sometimes it's just still half day, especially in this economy. A lot of schools are half day.
And you can always, even if your child is in kindergarten, you can always pull out early.
Yeah. And honestly, when you're 5, and especially if he's turning 5 in the summer, it's not unusual for people to wait one more year with kindergarten.
That's very true.
And that's with neurotypical kids.
Very true.
So if you decided to, as you were saying, to wait, you're not going to set them back by waiting it that year.
No, not at all. And I will say this a billion times. Your intensive ABA program is much, much more important at this point, because it is like having quality one-to-one tutoring. Your kindergarten program will have the benefits of allowing social opportunities for interaction. And there you go, just weigh those two against each other. I'm not saying to keep your child out of social opportunities, but realistically, with everything that your child needs to learn, exposing them to social opportunities is maybe 1/10 of all the other things. I mean, your child has to be learning language and cognitive skills and adaptive safety skills and self-help skills and executive functioning skills and motor skills. And there's a billion other things that your child has to learn. And social is very, very important, but it's like 1/8 or 1/7 of what they have to learn. And on top of that, bringing it all together is something that your ABA program will help you do. Yeah. I also insist for my kids that if they go to school, they have a certain level of basic language skills and understanding and communication so that they're actually successful and don't feel separated or apart from the other kids. So that's another important factor.
So having that time at home actually sets them up for success in the social arena, as opposed to throwing them in the deep end of the pool.
Exactly, and you summarized it very well, because a lot of times parents are very concerned and they want to get their child in school. And I say, don't worry about that. Just don't worry about it. Get your child prepared and teach them. This is like having one-to-one versus group instruction. Which one's better? One-to-one instruction, always, no matter what it is.
I always think about the very first IEP that we went to when Jem was 3, and what they wanted and the goals that they gave. It tore my heart out of my body, because they listed a bunch of goals, and every single, like one of them was that he'll be able to separate colors. He was 3, into separate cups. And I thought, that's one of the skills he actually already has. Like they would give him little teddy bears and he could put them into the cups so that all the yellow ones, all the red ones, and all the blue ones, he could do that like nobody's business. And I said that to them in the IEP, and I said, why do we have a goal that he can already do? If we're going to give goals, let's have, and they said, yeah, but he can't do it when other kids are around because of all the sensory and the stuff. And I said, so why, how does this make sense as a goal? And they said, well, he has to be able to do that with lots of, and they wanted to spend the whole year on that when he was 3. And I said, no, like that's a crazy idea. And instead we had 40 hours of card in our home, so that when he went to school, he went to preschool, fully included a year later, he only went to that part-time, he had gotten caught up in all these skills so he could do the work that the other kids were doing, and he could hang socially. And when I think about if I had listened to them.
I know, it's very annoying. And it's, the issue is that here's, oh God, I hope I don't get myself into trouble by saying this, but this is my personal thinking about this is that, we write these IEP. I mean, my most hated activity is going to an IEP meeting. Let me just say that. I hate it because it's a complete waste of time and it makes me crazy. I want to kill myself.
Any sane person would be crazy at an IEP meeting.
They're awful. And, you sit around for 3 hours and you set up 5 goals that the child is supposed to master over the course of 1 year. I, at least 100 times, have taken those 5 goals that were written for an annual IEP and have taught the child those 5 things in 2 months. So that's what CARD does. That's what good ABA does. It teaches you much more rapidly. And secondly, even when there is an IEP in place, honestly, how many times do you think most teachers or aides even look at that thing? So it's very annoying to have that thing govern your child's life for the next year. It really is.
Because they're legally responsible for teaching those things. But I will say this, that since having skills, my IEPs are faster.
Useful,
My IEPs are less than an hour and 15 minutes now, which is insanity. I am like, what happened? And we are getting much better goals written in that are substantive and that make sense and that they agree to much quicker because of skills.
And then you just have to now make sure that they actually implement during the course of the year.
Well, our school is very good about that, and we get regular notifications and benchmarks, and they will adjust things if they're not making progress toward meeting the goal. But they know I'm going to be on them about that. And I know lots of moms, I didn't do it this year, but I've done it in years past, and lots of moms, I didn't invent this, other moms suggested it to me, getting a sheet protector, copying the IEP and the BIP, putting that on the back, and sliding it into a sheet protector and having magnets attached to it, and taking it in on the first day and attaching it to the side of something metallic, either the desk or the file cabinet that's in the teacher's room, and then giving it to every single person who your child interacts with so they can't say they didn't read it.
Teachers and aides.
Everyone. So that, that doesn't ensure that they're going to look at it, but at least they can't say, I couldn't find it, I didn't know where it was.
I know. And that's, so then, that accomplishes the fact that everybody's read it. And then on the other end of the I guess the other side of the coin is that you just have to make sure that nobody really stigmatizes your child and because of an IEP existing treats your child differently.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
I think, Emily, we have time for one more question. Okay, new behavior. He is poking himself in the eye. 4 years old with some words, help.
Yeah, you need a behaviorist on this. You will have to do a FBA to identify, look at the functional assessment and identify why he's doing it. There could be so many reasons.
Right.
He could be doing it because he's attention seeking. He could be doing it because he has an allergy, his eye itches. He could be doing it because it's self-stimulatory in nature. It makes things look funny. You have to identify first why he's doing it, and then that will help lead to the intervention. Clearly, because it's a dangerous thing, you will be, in most cases, you'll be blocking, preventing this from happening, unless it's attention seeking, in which case, if you try to block it, it'll probably increase. So you really do need to first identify the function of the behavior.
Okay, really, really important, and you want to get a BCBA to do that.
Yeah, you need behaviors to be able to take a look at it and say why it's happening. You can also go on our skills website, and there is a CIFA there, which is the indirect functional assessment that CARD has developed. And it asks you a bunch of questions about this behavior, and it'll help you identify the function. You can use our CIFA. And if you do use our CIFA, then I would recommend that you use the BIP builder that goes with it.
Okay.
So you'll answer a bunch of questions. The CIFA will help identify why he's doing it, and then it'll link you to the BIP builder, which will tell you what to do and what the intervention should, or the options, all the options of interventions.
Okay, so let's give you a couple of quick websites if you want to get a pencil you can take down. So you can go to skillsforautism.com and go in and take a look at the CIFA and the BIP builder.
And I think the BIP builder and CIFA are on their own website as well.
They are, and I think that's BIPbuilder.com. So you can go there as well. If you want to find a BCBA, you can go to BACB.com and put in your .org, excuse me, thank you.
Sure.
And you can put in your zip code and it will give you lists of board certified behavior analysts. And of course, you can always go to centerforautism.com, click on the locations tab, see if there is a CARD office close to you. Even if there isn't, you can call the 800 number that's listed there and ask them if you can get remote services. And in that way, you would get a CARD BCBA. So all of those different things are available to you, but you don't want to do nothing. Don't let it go.
Right.
It's something to be concerned about, but you need to know why it's happening before you can effectively intervene. We are out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much for being here with us.